Interesting times, sis. Interesting times. The last time you were here, we had a completely different political situation. I would be remiss if I did not ask you how you feeling these days about things.
One of the things that has really excited me over the last, I would say, 48 to 72 hours has been the power of the Black community and Black women, particularly, who are engaged in civic engagement. Seeing the what I call when you form like Voltron,
Yeah,
right?
yeah, yeah. It's
Um,
been nice.
it's inspiring, it's powerful. It gives me hope around all the issues that we work on, right? Because if we can get into formation in this way and we are exercising that muscle, right, to plan and execute and to get something out the gate the way we've done over the last couple of days, then that means the issue that we're talking about this week, which is Black maternal mental health,
Mm,
is something that we can build solutions around and execute those solutions. So I'm feeling really powerful right now.
yeah.
And it's kind of a mixed bag because at the same time, all of the things that you just spoke about, are looming. At the same time, Black women can't call the police when they need help because the police may
Right.
come and kill them. At the same time, this maternal mental health crisis is on the rise, just like maternal health. And so I think I don't know, we walk in like a day to day kind of
Mm,
bittersweet thing of being some of the freshest people on the planet and most
mm,
powerful people on the planet, and then up against some of the most daunting challenges that
right.
once we conquer them, don't just make things better for us, but then better for everyone. And I just want to acknowledge, especially to all the sisters out there listening, I know they feel exhausted. It's not like Black women saved the day again. I'm sure you feel it too, Lurie. Like we're like, "Ugh,
Indeed.
again today, Wednesday.
Right.
Didn't we just save it Thursday of last week?"
We
Right.
stay on. We can't even vacation. We stay saving the nation. Lord.
So I just want to acknowledge that too, that as we talk about the powerful and amazing work that we're doing, I know a lot of sisters out there are feeling exhausted, right?
Yeah.
So just want to
Yeah.
give some
Yeah.
acknowledgement to that.
Yeah, and it's a heavy bag. It's a mixed and heavy bag because the reality is, as exhausted as we are, I was speaking with somebody who I have the utmost respect for, and they were saying, before all this was happening, it was like maybe it's time for this thing to break because I don't know if we're gonna be able to carry us over this particular finish line. This injection of energy has been a bit refreshing. I know that it's going to be a little easier to fight for some things. We got the Equal Rights Amendment and other things in New York and in other places, and I'm hopeful in that way, but. It's a long road, and I appreciate you carving out some space for us to acknowledge that. And I've been trying to be balanced and allowing for recognition that there are some of us are in our community who are like, you know what, I've had it. Like I've had every so often we you just sort of get this little burst of energy and then we organize and then it just sort of dissipates. And I've got a
Yeah.
number of comrades who are longing for us to have this sort of energy around. I mentioned one earlier. Little Miss Flint still ain't got to her donation number when it comes to clean water in Michigan. So multiple things can be true, and Black
That's
women can
right.
be tired through all of it. We can be
That's
tired.
right. That's
Yeah,
right. And we
yeah.
do. We get in those moments where we're like, oh, yeah, we just can't no more. It's going to break. But, I've been telling people a lot, a personal story from my family. We had a relative who got sick in North Carolina in December. So
Mm.
Medicaid expansion, we know we've been fighting it state by
Whoa.
state, and people don't have health care in certain states, depending on
Right.
their situation. A lot of gig workers, just a lot of people, a lot of folks,
Yeah.
working folks,
Yeah.
right? And so we have a close relative who got sick, very sick in December, could not get health care, was in a hospital, and they
Mm.
were like, we're going to discharge you because Medicaid expansion didn't come to North Carolina until January, February. Had to move that relative to another state, Maryland, where once they got to the hospital, they were instantly enrolled in Medicaid. To have those
Mm.
providers say it's too late. If we had gotten them a month earlier, then things could be different. These are the everyday stories that our families are experiencing. So when we say kind of like, oh, well, you know, let it just go off the rails, whatever, whatever, we have to understand that harms the people who are the most vulnerable in our families and communities. These safety
Right.
nets that we talk about are sometimes the difference between life and death for so
Yeah.
many folks. So I don't like to, but I usually have to share that story because sometimes we sit in a place of privilege where we're like, well, things are messed up anyway.
Come
Yes,
on.
and both, like you
Yes.
said, both things can be true. Yes,
That's
it's
right.
messed up. And this thing around healthcare and this battle to expand healthcare to everybody in the nation is a critical one. But when
Yeah.
you have it through your job, maybe you don't think about it, right? But
Right.
millions of people do
Lose
not.
that job and be put on the pink slip list and see how quickly you start thinking about it.
And then
I
see
often
how
find
important these
Monifa,
issues are. So yeah,
yeah,
I hear you.
yeah. I often find that, and the person I was thinking about is not in this category. They're actually one of the most productive people when it comes to organizing and infrastructure development that I've ever met. But a lot of people who sit in that space of, well, it's already messed up. Let's just let it all go to hell. Then we can start over. Those are people I find that don't really have a track record of doing anything besides talk. And that's the part that it's like, oh, and I heard Dr. Greg Carr this morning say some of his most revolutionary friends are college professors with amazing retirement plans, right? It's so easy to be revolutionary when you are in a safe space and your needs are met, and your skin in the game can be theoretical as opposed to praxis, which is applying that theory on the ground, and so that matters as well. And all of that weighs heavily on our mental health, and we are at the end or nearing the end of Black Maternal Mental Health Week. Talk to us about what this week has meant for Moms Rising and what it means for moms all across the country.
Yeah, I'm always lifting up amazing partners that we have, which are usually grassroots
Yeah.
Black women organizations that have taken up the mantle and said, we want to fix this for our
Mm-hmm.
sisters. So we got an amazing organization out of Houston called Shades of Blue, which are Black women who've experienced things like postpartum depression, who've experienced, the anxiety and had people in their families who experienced postpartum suicide who've come together and said, we got to lift up these stories and put forth some policies to bring resources to our families and communities around maternal mental health. And so Moms Rising and dozens of other partners have worked with them over the past 3 years now to elevate what we're calling Black Maternal Mental Health Week. And it's really to put forth a couple of things. There's one bill called the Moms Matter Act, right? Which basically would establish a maternal mental health equity grant program to invest in local initiatives supporting people
Wow.
with mental health conditions during and after pregnancy. Now, I know everyone listening is
Wow.
like, we need that for everybody, not just pregnant people, because we have a big
Yeah.
gap in our mental health coverage. But
Mm,
understand that when you are pregnant, you are even more vulnerable on top of that, right? So these
mm.
organization and this week is fighting for funding on the state and local level to open up some grants so that we have support, so that there's places that people can go and resources that they can receive when they're experiencing things like postpartum depression. And then the second one is the one you and I always talk about,
Mm-hmm.
the funding to grow and diversify the maternal, mental, and behavioral health care workforce. Just like we know that babies do better, people do better when they have Black doctors. Well, guess what, y'all? In mental health, in mental health provider world, we also do better when we have providers who come from
That's
our communities, which
that's right.
requires training, which requires diversifying that workforce, putting resources down into the schools where Black and Brown students are so that they can access this pathway, this career pathway, and be providers for their communities. Because we know that we've learned from Dr. Uche Blackstock, these types of things
Yes.
have been defunded. We're not asking for
That's right.
something that we don't know we need because it was attacked because of eugenics. Black medical health education had been defunded over 50 years. So those are the two big asks, right? So we know we need more folks like us in the field
Yes.
to attack
Yes.
the issue, and we need those resources because our women are struggling. I mentioned Sonia Massey earlier.
Mm,
Watching those videos,
girl. Devastating.
experiencing police brutality, and then watching people who look like you experiencing police brutality day in and day out
Yeah.
will destroy and eat away at your mental and emotional health. So people ask me,
That's
why?
right.
Well, why do Black women experience higher rates of maternal mental health? Let me send you the last 5 viral videos of the day, and you tell me.
Exactly. Exactly. And this is one of the reasons why we initiated our power work assignments. And those were opportunities for us to not just hear from experts like yourself, Monifa, about the different forms of legislation that's out there. Excuse me, but for us to understand how we then engage with our elected officials to get this legislation across the finish line. I see Lisa Blunt Rochester, Representative Lisa Blunt Rochester, Representative Underwood out of Illinois, Lisa Blunt Rochester coming, of course, out of Delaware, Representative Brian Fitzpatrick, who is a Republican out of Pennsylvania. They have released the Moms Matter Act, and this is, as you noted, it is a piece of legislation that would do a lot to really examine pregnancy-related deaths and to really expand. And I just shared a link there. Amina, if you could please tweet it out. I put it in the call sheet. Thank you. So you all who are following Urban View Radio on Twitter will be able to get access to that. And that's the Moms Matter Act. Can you give us the name of the second legislation that you just referenced, Monifa? I want people to have specific names for the bills that they would
Yes, the
be elected.
Moms Matter Act does both those things. Those two
Oh,
things
it's the
that
same
I mentioned.
legislation.
Yes, those are a big part of it.
Love it.
So I want people to know that it's not just to get resources, but make sure that we strategically direct funding to diversify and expand that workforce in ways that we know will have better outcomes in our communities, right? Which means the people
Mm,
need to come from our communities that are providing these
yeah.
services.
And I'm seeing that this is an act that's been endorsed by more than 180 organizations. They provide a link to the list. So this is something that right now every single listener could call their elected official. Folks are looking for something to do. Yes, we want, I personally want Kamala Harris to be the next president of the United States because quite frankly, I know what's on the other side of this option. But we can't just send a president. You got to send a Congress. You got to make sure that the Congress and the Senate are also going to be comprised of members who are going to center this legislation. Those every single one of you right now have a member of Congress. They're all 430 some odd members of Congress are up for re-election this November. 33 members of the Senate are up for re-election this November, which means every single one of you listening right now can pick up the phone where you should already have your elected officials saved information saved on your phone. That was our very first assignment, the first year I was on this show. But what you can do is go to the 5Calls app. You can contact them. You can phone call. You can email, social media, send them a letter, snail mail, whatever it is, fax, whatever. But we need to let people know this is the legislation that we demand, and we want to know where they stand on this legislation. What are they going to do to advance this legislation? Have they signed on to the legislation? Who are they getting to help co-sponsor the legislation? Because that's how Congress knows what we the people want, and that's how we find out where they stand. Find out if where they stand on this particular piece of legislation. Where do they think moms matter is an issue? And if not, you may need to figure out who their opponents are so that we can get busy not just hearing about this information and then the opportunities for growth and expansion and advocacy, but actually doing the work of elevating it into a realistic space where manifestation can happen. Monifa, are there any other steps we should be taking? Is there a petition we can sign? No, Moms Rising, y'all always got assignments. So is there anything else we should be doing in addition to contacting our electeds on this legislation?
Yes, please absolutely sign our petition. And you know what I always tell people is to share your stories. These stories are really hard, but when we come to elected leaders with data points,
Yeah,
right? And you come and you say, well, 50% of the people experience this, or, Black women die 3 to 4 times more likely. It just kind of goes in one ear and out the other. One of the ways that we've been so successful in advancing some of our issues is that we come with storybooks, right? And we say, okay, so and so, you represent Oregon. Read these 10 stories from your state. You think that this is not happening to your constituents, or you think this is happening to a certain kind of constituent, or
right.
somehow this is happening at the fault of one of your constituents. So we share these stories and we use them as a powerful tool to advance these pieces of policy. So once you sign our petition, I dropped the link here in the chat. Hopefully you guys can share it out as well. You will
Absolutely.
also be prompted to tell your story. And sometimes it's your story, sometimes it's your sister's story, sometimes it's your mother's story, right? But we have to let folks know that just because we're not hearing about it in the news day in and day out, doesn't mean that it's not a widespread issue that needs our attention. And then the piece that you said about our elected officials, right? And the race for the presidency. I tell people, even if your best friend is running for and winning the presidency, right? You have to have demands. There has to be an agenda that
Come
you
on.
give to them, right? I
Come
mean,
on.
what did Obama say? Make me do it, right? We
And,
can't
and
just
and can I
say,
just say we're
mhm.
not going to repeat the mistakes that we made during Barack Obama's administration. And I don't want to hear nothing. Well, now because it's a black woman, y'all go. No, no, no. We learned some lessons. We've learned some things, and we are going to get much better at holding black elected officials accountable because we give them a pass. I see that what's happening in New York City. We got a whole ass power grab with the black mayor setting up a faux commission to essentially undermine the predominantly city council of colors effort to have police reform, and the black mayor is leading the charge to undermine the elected representatives who are doing the work of advocating on behalf of the people. So skin folk, kin folk, and other folk are all in the mix, but we're going to have some demands. We're not just going to stroll, step, and slide and, throw up our respective signs and whatnot. No shade to anybody if it's not a diamond size. But no shade, no shade. I'm just saying, we just got some things to do. And so we have to be clear about the fact that this ain't going to be like business as usual. It can't be. We don't have the ability or the luxury of making the same mistakes under a future administration that we did under the Obama administration, which was, from my perspective, no demands. We just wanted to dance and electric slide at the White House and Black Camelot. Monifa, I don't know if you feel differently about that, but I feel kind of strong about that.
Would you say both things can be true? Both things can be true. There's
That's
my
right.
husband always says there's a plurality of truths. I was like, I love when he says that. But yeah, absolutely. There was like a honeymoon phase that went on for too long.
Mm. Yeah.
I'll say
Yeah.
that, right?
Yes,
And
that's right.
and
That's
and
right. You
I
can't be
understand
honeymooning
it.
your whole marriage. You got to, at some point, you got to
You
get
got
to
to
the
get
nitty
down
gritty.
to making the budget and the plan and doing and I understand it because for those of us that were talking with our parents and my grandparents at the time, they needed a while to sit in it, and
Yeah.
not be like, okay, now this, now that. But now, yeah, it's a new day, right?
Mhm.
And we know that we only have but certain amount of time. I talk
Yeah.
about it like the 100 meter, it seems like 8 years is a long time and it's not. And if you want somebody to get something done for you, right? It's
Yeah.
like that 100 meter. You got to be like a rocket out the gate, right? Because the
That's
momentum starts to peter off. It's not like the 200 meter. I've been watching Olympic stuff where
right.
you have time maybe to gain some momentum and catch up, right? With that
Yeah.
100 meter, you really, that first 100 days, y'all, we need to, yes, be supportive. Make sure the racist and sexist attacks that we know will come down. Misogynoir is real, right?
That's right.
And I think also having someone's back is also about pushing them to be the best person they can be. That's
Yeah.
that's the truth of how we love, right?
That's right. That's right.
And how we've been taught to
Monifa,
love.
that is exactly right. And that's one of the reasons why I appreciate you and have loved you for years, because I think you're dope and your analysis is exactly what we need. And I'm so glad you're in this position.
Likewise.
What's the best way for people to follow you and Moms Rising?
Absolutely. Follow me at Monifa Bandele on all social media platforms and at Moms Rising on all social media platforms. Sign our petition, and that puts you on our email list, and you'll get our emails every week.